Hey, Maris, ever been to a poetry slam?
No, I have not, but I do know they're like competitions of the literary kind.
Exactly. Slam U Lit is a group composed of some of Kansas City's hottest young poets, all under the guidance of their slam master, Mvion Payne.
The group was formed in 2014 and it's been to the Slam Nationals 2 of the last 3 years.
Earlier this summer, producer Ashley Holcroft dropped in on their pre-finals tune-up at the Westport Coffee House.
The mother breaks the silence, screaming, "Why? Not my son, why?" The wife runs down the middle of the aisle, her dress blacked out. She reaches the casket. The mother screams out, "This is not fair." Let me explain how my best friend Aaron got there.
It started out with having a lot to say, but not knowing how to express it. I began in church, singing and doing gospel poetry. And I felt like I wanted to push the limits. I had more to say.
This last week I had a dream. And I was playing hide and seek with depression. And it found me hiding behind my smile.
Born out of a schism from another group, Slam U Lit has been igniting the KC poetry scene since 2014. Thriving under the direction of Slam master Mvion Payne, who presides over a season of 6 scheduled bouts that take place all over Kansas City, with the 7th deciding who earns a place on the team heading to nationals. But the draw is much more than recognition.
It can be a very visceral thing. It's very soul-stirring, and you get a lot of truth. You get a lot of angst. You get a lot of anger sometimes. Sometimes you get love and joy, but the thing that I really enjoy about slam poetry is that it is a true representation of the gamut of human emotions. Why weren't you listening? Or are you? Should we crescendo our cries until they reach the clouds? At that point, would justice reign? At that point, would mercy reign? Or will it be just another rainy day? Another face, another name. Like, there's no such thing as, oh, you can't be angry, you can't feel this way, you can't say this, you can't say that. It's one of the few times in society where you are allowed to stand amongst a crowd of people and express your heart, express your deepest secrets, your deepest thoughts, this whatever it is that's inside of you, you get that opportunity to bring it out and say, here is what I feel, here's what I've lived through, here's what I've experienced, this is what matters to me. And no one can take that away from you.
My boy can't walk to the store at night like other teens, can't play his music loud like other teens. One minor infraction and he is dead on the scene. Prisoner in his own neighborhood is my boy, Harris.
Poetry is blood sport, okay? So when you slam, there is a little bit of ego involved. If you don't believe in yourself, who else in the audience is believing in you, honestly? So I do believe in myself when I hit the stage. I'm always, nervous, but this is how we really became entwined as a slam family.
A slam family that is brought together by a simple scoring process, with a 10 being
the best poem you ever heard. Prince comes down from a cloud and he starts playing the guitar solo like right in the middle of the slam. I can't say that there's only one type of poet who's going to be at a slam. And if there were one type of poet, I don't think I'd still do this.
And just as distinct as each poet, so too are the styles employed when crafting their prose.
I am a conceptual thinker. I may get a line, but if that line doesn't necessarily have a concept attached, it doesn't necessarily develop. Once I get the concept, it's like, oh, okay, and I can start writing. My process also involves a lot of editing. That's when it actually becomes poetry, when you form it, when it sounds sonically good, when it looks good on the paper.
There's over 500 different poetic forms that you could write a poem in. The only thing that I require from my teammates is for them to write honestly. As I've told them, I'm your slam master and I stand behind what it is that you do. So don't worry about that. I have your back. Before anybody says anything to you, they're going to say something to me. So I just want you to be honest, and I just want you to always remember why you're here.
That mentality is what got their team of 5 to the National Poetry Slam in Decatur, Georgia, where 72 teams from all over America and Europe compete for the title.
Nationals is magic, and you know it's magic when a magical black girl says something is magic.
Out of nowhere, your beauty did a solo, your confidence started to tap the snare drum that captured my eardrum when you said, I love you.
My mind was too busy being consumed with thoughts of women getting slit across their throats for saying no.
We had nearly nothing, but almost everything, because my mama had superpowers. But even though she had superpowers, she couldn't hide her kryptonite truth.
Though the trophy went to another team, that was hardly the only prize.
Like, I've heard a lot of people talk about, like, hallucinogenic drugs, for instance, as being they're gonna have a life-changing experience or a spiritual awakening. And I felt like that's what happened, just being submerged in that much amazing poetry. It was incredible.
Mentally restrained with metal and chains, yellow and yay injunctions that claim to target gangs, enhancing the charges we face and funneling us into cages.
History has made my skin tone a defining aspect. I know.
That's one of the really cool things about Kansas City and being a representative for Kansas City. People always remark about how different our poems are and that we have our own voice.
But I